Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome. This side, I am Urvashi Shahi, former Senior Research Fellow, Center for Insolvency and Bankruptcy, Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs. And today, I am truly honored to moderate this session just because the speaker on the other side is my professional and personal mentor as well. She is Dr. Neeti Shikha, Head Center for Insolvency and Bankruptcy, Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs. She is the sole person responsible for creating two batches of young cadre of insolvency professionals in India. She is a life member of Force Society, which is the parent body of Force School of Management. She is also on Academic Advisory Council of ISPP. Dr. Neeti government. She has held academic positions at various law and business schools in India and Singapore. Previously, she was an associate professor and head at International Cell at Symbiosis Law School. She has a lot of other accolades to herself. Dr. Neeti, I think there would have been no other better speaker to speak on this topic on what is the career, what is the future of insolvency for our young professionals or people who are looking forward to a career in insolvency. So the floor is all yours, Dr. Neeti.
Thank you so much, Urvashi. It's always a pleasure to be introduced by a young scholar like Urvashi, who I truly honor and regard. And I'm really happy to keep coming back to BR Foundation for the sole reason that I'm really moved by the mission that they take forward, which is imparting education in various space. Urvashi has said that I'm the best person to be speaking on a career in insolvency. My dear fellows, I'm not very sure I'll be able to do justice to the speakers who have already spoken or are lined up, like Shri Behram Vakil Saab, Mr. Satish Kumar Gupta ji, and you have such great speakers to speak, to join the panel, to join the program. I'm really not sure if I'll be able to do sort of justice, but what I can give you today is the from the academic side, what does it take to become a resolution professional, and my little interaction with the professionals, my personal and first hand experience of getting my students of GIP who I believe are the torchbearer of this insolvency ecosystem of future. uh, you know what have they done to stand apart in today's legal field and fraternity. And mind you, um, these students are not just lawyers. They have been they are chartered accountants, engineers who joined this profession and have tried to understand and get a take on insolvency laws. So it's really interesting to be speaking on this what this code has for future. But I would just like to lay down a brief structure of my talk today. Uh, you know, uh, Firstly, I would like to share with you certain skills that you require, to understand the IBC laws or insolvency laws in general. Then I would like to speak about what are the career options under insolvency ecosystem. And in the end, I would like to speak upon, what does it take to become a good resolution professional? What is the role that it entails? I'm sure Satish Serji would be will speak more deeply, more practically on this side. But what I'll try to do is try to sort of help you understand, what extra a law student should do to become a successful RP. So thank you so much. And let me also say that I'm a teacher, so which means that I there would be time when I could go on with my monologue and bore you. So my dear participants, if you feel that you want to break the monologue, trust me, it'll be my pleasure to stop, pause, and take a questions as I proceed. So you can ask me questions even as I speak. Uh, you can park it towards the end, but I'll be happy to take any questions that you may have as I speak. So, you know, insolvency law in India, the first, I would say see, IBC, it's found its feet in 2016, but insolvency law in India had its had its presence even before IBC. But as you would know, that before IBC, the insolvency laws were guarded by more of colonial experience, and the business at the center of the insolvency did not really found a firm conviction. What I mean to say is that though courts always followed the existing jurisprudence that winding up should be method of last resort, when you try to wind up or when you try to resolve a business problem in a company which is moving towards insolvency, somehow the way the law was structured, the way the system was designed, it did not really favor business, right? So the true, I would say, transformation in the approach towards resolving insolvency, in approach towards respecting business, respecting the risks that business takes, and respecting the fact that business may not always get profit. They may sometimes get into stress, and unfortunately, sometimes even insolvency may strike. This whole, the idea of understanding business holistically and then finding a market centric solution to this business problem came for the first time in through IBC. And I will not be boasting if I say that insolvency and bankruptcy code is a truly market centric reform. We are in 2021 and we are celebrating you know uh, I don't remember what year of India's liberalization. In 1991, we got liberalization, so almost like a 2 decade of liberalization. But mind you, the liberalization of market reforms truly occurred, you know, with the advent of IBC. Uh, so what IBC did was to find problems to insolvency, problems to stress in the company from the market as its center. Uh, Now, you must have read in economic that market forces play in different ways, right? And there are a lot of invisible hands which sorts of guards how market behaves and how market operates. To understand how market behaves and operates, it's very, very crucial that you do not only understand law in isolation, but you also understand the economics of law. You also understand the social dimension of law. Students, when we talk about a company in being in stress and a company petitioning for winding up, it is not just the promoter who suffers. It is, multiple employees, thousands of employees who are employed with that company lose jobs. We're talking about a corporation which could have, you know, added to the exchequer through taxes, and so there could be a loss of taxes to the exchequer. We're talking about a company which could have paid, if in good times, paid interest on the credit taken from the banks and helped banks profit. We're talking about companies which could have probably given consumer goods and consumers take it, they consume it, and in other words, they also help you know individuals like you and I benefit from the activities of a corporation. So, the point I'm trying to tell you here is that when you talk about insolvency laws, you cannot keep yourself in isolation and read letters as it is in a literal sense. You need to understand how law is to be interpreted, from the economic perspective, from the social perspective, from the consumer perspective, from the market perspective. And hence, it is extremely important that whoever is practicing in the field of insolvency understands these propositions, understands the policy, policy objective of this law. Now, you all must be aware of the whole broader structure of insolvency and bankruptcy code. You know, if just put it very simply, the layman term, what does the law provide? It provides that if a business does a default of a crore or over, as you would know, the threshold has increased to 1 crore, the creditors could go to the court and petition for starting of a corporate insolvency resolution process. The first approach, the primary approach that court takes is to ask the creditors to start re-looking into finding a resolution for business. And when they look into finding insolvency resolution, they're looking at primarily to either turn around a company through financial restructuring or turn around a company through operational restructuring, right? And if through the CRP process the company is able to get back to its feet, then it is able to save thousands of jobs, as I said. It's able to rescue the company, and it's a win-win situation for everybody in the system. However, in the case the company does not get rescued, then the company goes for liquidation. So if you look at the whole the whole structure of the structure through which the corporate rescue mechanism is designed, it requires somebody to be able to understand the financial stress in a company, which basically means to look at the company's balance sheet and say, oh, these were the issues in the company. These are the reasons why a company may not survive. If you're talking about operational turnaround, we're looking for somebody who has a human skill, who can talk to suppliers, take some time out and try to see if the company can really get back on its feet. We could to you know get some expert on the board to look at where the operational cost be minimized and help the company revive. Understanding of insolvency laws necessarily requires multiple skills in individuals. And even if you choose to practice IBC as a pure lawyer, you may be asked to petition on behalf of employees. You may be asked to petition on behalf of operational creditors, financial creditors. So on the skill side, or on the skill side, you need to have some technical skills. You also need to have soft skills. On the technical skills, though you are a lawyer, you need to appreciate the operations. You need to appreciate, the human behavior. You need to understand how organization works. You also need to understand, the financial side, the accounts, etc. You may not be experts in any of these, but an appreciation of all these different domains is required if you're working in insolvency. And it becomes imperative if you become an insolvency professional, which I'll come to in a bit. So I hope you would appreciate that, insolvency laws, to understand the law, to work in this law, multiple skill sets are required for you to become a successful professional. Any questions so far before I proceed? Now, insolvency law. Urush, do you have any question before I proceed?
No, I'll ask later.
Okay, okay. So, many times people say that insolvency law in India is fairly new. How do you understand? How do you understand the jurisprudence? What are other laws that you need to know to understand insolvency law? So on and so forth. A lot of people have asked me, a lot of students ask me, what are the various areas of law I need to focus on? Now, you know, I feel that to understand insolvency laws, you need to have a very, very strong grip on commercial sides of law. When I say commercial laws, I mean to say your Companies Act, your contract, also trust, the way trust in commercial, scheme functions. You need to have understanding of, employees' benefits, labor laws, because there could be a lot of labor related issue that you might have to look into, and most importantly, your contract laws. If you're working in the international insolvency sphere, then your understanding of private international law is extremely important. I'll just try to share some little experience as to how I started developing. When IBC came, many people said that, oh, the gentleman is an expert in IBC. IBC is a fairly new law. Nobody can claim that kind of authority because the law itself does not claim that authority. The way IBC is evolving, the code cannot say I'm complete and I'm master of myself, because even the code is evolving over time. A lot of standing jurisprudence, which was 3 years back, has been shifted today, right? So when a law is new, The benefit that you have in exploring a career option there is that you could really try to become master with, with time as it passes. All you need to be is to be updated with the technical side and keep reading and relate the objective of the law to the jurisprudence that is evolving. And I'm speaking completely from a very, very academic perspective. Now let me give example of what I'm talking about. uh, when IBC came, and the first class I went to GIP, and I started talking to students about waterfall 53. And there were simple questions coming from students that, madam, where does the cost of CIRP cost would lie? I said, don't have to look at 53. The common sense, or the common sense says it should be same as the way the company is actually provided. And any so few things might have changed in 53, but by and large, if you see the way these 53 is being interpreted and being changed, we are moving more towards convergence of what exists in the Companies Act. Because you cannot have a different system of settling claims in a CIRP process as against claims in a winding up cases. Many people ask me about things like, right to voting and OCs having equal bargaining power as secured creditors. And I would always argue that this is not the right thing in the law because, if you look at the way the law of security is involved, in a free market, when two parties get into bargain to get money, I mean, in such financial contracts, the parties are free to become a secured creditor or not to be a secured creditor. Now, if somebody with its willy-nilly accepts to be an unsecured creditor, I doubt that law will really come and to his rescue to give him a super priority as compared to an unsecured creditor. I mean, there have been lots of cases under English law on that. So, from the jurisprudence part perspective, what the law would see is, were you on the equal bargaining power? Were you free to sort of negotiate your terms? Was there influence on you? And under any law across the globe, a secured creditor would never supersede unsecured creditor would never supersede secured creditor, which also means to say that they will not make decisions in a company when a company is not a going concern. Why? Because when a company is a going concern, somewhere the whole balance of interest is tilted towards shareholders. And when a company is not a going concern, the balance shift towards the creditors. And when I say creditors, I primarily mean the secured creditors. Now, Indian courts took a little while to appreciate this particular jurisprudence. And I'm very certain that as the time evolves, the jurisprudence of IBC will come much, much closer to the common law jurisprudence of insolvency. I'm pretty certain about that. So, why I'm telling you all this? I'm telling you all this because when you read insolvency laws, do not become very purist. Whenever you talk about market-centric laws, commercial laws, it's you have to think from a multiple dimension. And most importantly, you have to see what has been the long jurisprudence. Can a law really shift a standing jurisprudence, which has been jurisprudence of, commercial equity, by, giving regard to somebody who has not got that kind of, the positioning in the matter of commerce? And how does this come? You may ask me, how does this come? It comes by reading. An insolvency lawyer cannot just go and say that, I have a command on English laws. No, you have to see what other courts are doing. You know, I am reminded that Australian courts were the first courts to really honor the LDC clauses in the contract. And very slowly, multiple courts started picking it up. So when I was your age, I was taught, penalty clauses. If LDC clauses are penalty clauses not enforceable, it's only to sort of threaten the person, but not really to, seek damages from the person. But that jurisprudence has shifted. So what needs is a reasoning mind A rational mind, a mind who understands the economics of law, a mind who understands that, if you economic bargain, what have you economically bargained for to get out of insolvency process? And that only comes when you have, when you have enough, I would say, meat in your brain, which means you've read enough and you have questioned. So this is first thing I would like to say. So, your understanding of contract, company laws, you know, uh, if you want to go into international practice, then private national laws are extremely crucial. Now,
Dr.
coming to,
Neeti,
yeah,
on that point, if you could quickly list certain skills which are required, like you've talked about different skills, but if you can list a few skills which
yeah,
you think are very important to make a career in insolvency, whether as insolvency professional or anything else,
yeah.
but just in the field of insolvency.
No, very rightly said. So if I look at the soft skills, uh, you need to have a critical thinking ability, and critical thinking ability has been very loosely used by everybody, every institution, every document. When I say critical thinking, I'm talking about a mind that can question. A mind does not take things, I'm sorry to say, but a mind who does not belong to the positivist school of thought, a mind who may appreciate law but goes beyond what law is and ask questions. So a critical thinking mind is extremely important. Second soft skill that you need is a good communication, because please appreciate that when you're talking about insolvency, is a very disturbed system. you know when a company goes into stress, you know the the premise of trust shifts to the premise of distrust. For instance, I'll give you an example that a shareholder in good times does not bother much, at least in a dispersed shareholding structure, to think about how the directors are behaving, because he or she knows that the company is doing well, I'm getting my profits back. But once the company starts not doing well, just stops to perform better, all these gentlemen or ladies sitting on the board, be it the shareholders, promoters, investors, they start becoming very conscious of their rights. So when you're working in a system which is premised on distrust, premised on threat, you need to have a lot of calm and composure. So critical thinking, a mind which is composed, calm, you know, if you're a lawyer, you may get threatened, you may get a calls from various stakeholders. uh, Objectivity is most important. Like, look at home buyers case. Now in home buyers case, I'm sure people would have spent all their life savings in buying homes, and still date we have not reached a resolution. Now a lawyer might come have clients who comes cries to them. You get very emotional about it, and you have to show a very objective side of the case to your to your client as well as to the court. So objectivity is asked most important. Then gravitas. you know what happens in insolvency, especially if a young resolution professional, like the ones we create through the graduate insolvency program, an RP wears multiple hats. When insolvency strikes, the board gets dissolved, and all the powers and obligations of the board sort of shifts to the resolution professional. Now here is one man sitting on a chair facing multiple people in an insolvent, in the system. It could be a group of COC members who just want their money back. It could be a group of OCs who are crying horses because they don't get to vote. They're not sure if their money will come back. There could be a group of promoters who are totally hostile towards him. And then he has to deal with so many people. But how does a young person who is 28 or 30 or 32 years, I mean, GIP has 28 years age barrier. So how does a person who's 30 years old, or let that be, how does a person who's even a 35-year-old IP sitting in a chair and facing all these guys who are very bullish in terms of, business acumen, bullish in terms of finance, you need to have a lot of gravitas. You need to have that composure and that commands respect, right? So being an insolvency professional especially requires multiple skills. Uh, you know, Another thing I would, say is negotiation skill, because this is a point where everybody's contesting for their rights. What is that you should really take? I was reading some article where somebody had written that a huge haircut banks have to take, and they're just settling for larger haircuts. I think the question you have to probably the question they ask themselves is that if I wait for 8 years, will I have more chance of getting my money back, or should I just take 50 or 75% of haircut and just settle with whatever I have today? Because maybe in their commercial wisdom they do not see the money flowing. They don't know, they don't think that uh, turnaround would be so quick. So every case is a unique in itself. And then as a either as a lawyer, there are a lot of chances where court might tell you, why don't you go and pre-mediate your negotiate your conflict, pre-mediate your with the COC, and through try to reach a conclusion. So as a, one of the skills that's required is to have a very, very good strong negotiation skill. And again, I might be very wrong when I say this, but it's extremely important to be objective and think from the company's perspective, even if you're representing your client who may be a creditor. So I'm not saying that you harm your client's interest, but show your client, if whoever he or she is, that what would be good for the company. Because if the company survives, it is like a happy situation for everybody. If the company does not survive, it may not be happy situation for everybody. So that sorts of, as a resolution professional, you would know that you have to invite bids. You have to, you have to see where people are there to get, resolution application. You have to be a very good marketer. You need to know how to market a stressed company to get more bids. You need to have a very, very good drafting skill, because when you prepare IM, you have to ensure that all the disclosures need to be there in IM, which is the information memorandum. You have to have that eye, you have to have an eagle's eye to see where to hunt for what, so that the company survive. For example, where the resolutions may come from. You need to have the and skill, and's eye to see where is the flaw in the, in the compliances. Like if somebody's filing for compliance, have they described enough? There's a section where the debtor might have to describe, the assets. Has it just left it very wide, or has it given the specifics? So you need to really have an eye for detail. uh, Honestly, if you ask me, I would think it's too much to expect from a single person. But insolvency is a career option for somebody who really wants to thrive. I mean, wants to do multiple things, and who's like, a person who's very multifaceted, who's kicked by these sort of challenges, who's a risk taker, and who's ready to sort of take on the job. So just to name a few things, these are, I would say, the key skills required. Now, in case you choose a career, what are the career options through IBC? Now, see, insolvency law in India it gave birth to one of the new professions in India called RP, resolution professional, or insolvency professional. Also, some of the careers options became more sophisticated with the coming of the IBC. For instance, valuer as a career option has already been there for the longest time. But the kind of valuation that you might require now in India is very, very different, very sophisticated. So, when a company is getting dissolved, it could have a lot of intellectual property that needs to be valued. Now, as chartered accountant, or a person of accounts, you need to understand how do you value the IP, how do you sort of value the global IP that you have, how to transfer the licenses. So a very how to value the licenses that the company holds. So a sort of very sophisticated sort of skill in valuation is now needed. You must have read about various companies which have filed for insolvency, where promoters have run away from the country, and it's said that their property has been taken outside India. So you need somebody who could really find where the properties are, where the money has been siphoned off. Now, uh, at least in other countries, I know are very, very sophisticated investigation agencies coming up, which which sole responsibility is to find out where the money has been siphoned from the corporate accounts. And in India also, it's picking up. The fourth profession I feel that's coming up is again a very, very sophisticated auditor's profession. Then a lot of option for startups, like there's huge number of compliances to be followed if a company undergoes CIRP. So I'm aware that some companies are, some individuals are looking into how to make it user friendly, how to make it corporate friendly. So that is one. um, you know the way insolvency law looks at a big company and a small company is very different. So a lot of options for young people like you, in field of pre-packs, new dimensions of insolvency that's coming up, like pre-packaged insolvency or fresh start insolvency process for individuals. So a lot of career options are coming there, right? So in nutshell, I would say that IBC has opened vistas of career opportunities. And this is one area, my dear fellows, today, that you will not be limited to India, but the, depending on the global nature of the company that you're working with, you know, your work is to be found its effects. It gets ramified in, to countries beyond India. For instance, if a company has some assets outside India, you'll get involved in working with international professionals, practitioners, to see how the money could be brought back. If the company has been an investor in other country, how do you sort of get that, how do you wind up those shares that the company has, as an equity has in other country? If there's a guarantee given by a parent company which is outside India, how do you treat that in Indian courts to settle the claim of the local creditors? So in nutshell, I would say a lot of opportunities have risen, and especially a lot of consulting opportunities also have risen, because you know when a company is not a going concern, a lot of claims come up. There could be fight between the employers and employees. As a mediator, lawyers always make merry where there's a chaos, isn't it? I think lawyers are the only people who make merry when there's chaos. So in that chaos, you try to find business and see how you could settle. For marketing guys, if the company is not doing well, how do you brand yourself? The whole branding strategy got to change now, because the company is still not wound up, but the company needs to show that company is not doing that bad, because otherwise you'll not get better bids. So a hell lot of things are sort of involved in becoming a good insolvency professional. uh, now I'll just take few minutes to talk about the graduate insolvency program that we run at ISCA. And I must make a mention, my dear fellows, that Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs is the premier institute that was the first to start a course on insolvency in India. In fact, we have a very, very veteran professor, Dr. Paila. He runs 3 months, 9-month course, which is an e-course. And IICA, under leadership of our current DG and Dr. Paila being at the center, they have they had the opportunity to train the founding members of NCLT and NCLAT. All of them got trained at the Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs. It's a think tank working under Ministry of Corporate Affairs. Now, I'm coming to the academic career because that is something very, very close to my heart. I want to talk about it in a bit, Partha. So we do, graduate insolvency program, where if you're a lawyer, I see most of you as lawyers, yeah, you could take an all India examination. And if you qualify the written examination, and if you qualify the interview and the GD, then you join this course, which is a 2 years course. 1 year you spend with us, 1 year you go to the industry. Now, I'm not gonna talk the nitty gritties about the course because already they're on the website. I'll just tell you how interestingly the career has panned out for some lawyers. Now, there's a student in my batch called Divyansh. Divyansh was a hardcore litigating lawyer. If you talk to him, he really speaks like litigating lawyer, like Delhi High Court lawyer. Imagine wearing a band and gown and always arguing about the disputes. Today, Divyansh is ready to take a career in a financial firm. He trained for 1 year with IARC, which is Blackstone India Group, under the mentorship of the CEO of Blackstone India, and he is now to take a career in financial side. Now, would you ever imagine a litigating lawyer getting a career in ARC or investment banking? I mean, that would not be very heard of, right? But and how he found is, I mean, I asked Mr. Anurag that what did you find in him when you selected him? And he said that, Dr. Shikha, we have experts, financial experts on our team, and trust me, they're the best. But a lot of cases that we come goes for arbitration, are going through arbitration. Now, I needed somebody who understands IBC and also understands what are the legal nuances for the companies or the contracts which are being arbitrated. And he said that having somebody who understands the finance, who rather say appreciates the finance, and also understands the whole CIRP process, and can really give expert contribution on the legal area of say arbitration, something I was looking at. There's another example of a student I'll tell you who is a lawyer, and Rishika. Rishika went to work with the IPE, and I was sitting through her presentation. I mean, this first batch has completed his internship, and I was amazed to see how much operation she handled. Like literally running off a company, talking to vendors, talking to different people, talking to bankers. Now, a usual law career is not that dynamic. Now, you can make it to a financial firm like IARC if you're good. Edelweiss last time reached out to me and said that, can you give me some students who are good at law? And I said, you are at ARC. Why are you looking for lawyers? But they said the same thing. I need somebody who brings diverse skill on the board. I'm happy to share with you that one of the young guys from MNLU has gone to train with Deloitte. I mean, there have been a lot of lawyers training with firms, but this example just comes from top of my mind. Sashwat is a lawyer from MNLU, and he went to train with Deloitte. So this kind of diversification of your career options and also diversifying of your interest is something which IBC, I would not say in general offers you, but GIP for sure offers you. You know, honestly speaking, guys, I've never seen a classroom as diverse as GIP in the whole country today. If you go to MBA schools, even if it's the best ABC, it's flooded with engineers. If you go to ISB, it's flooded with engineers, mostly engineers. If you go to LLM classes, how many judges are sitting with you? When I was at UCL, I had one of the world's top arbitrator doing a course with me. I had some judges from Hong Kong and China coming and doing a course with me. But that kind of, national diversity, I would say education diversity is missing in most of the classrooms in India. But here, GIP is offering you to study in a small cohort with a chartered accountant, lawyer, and engineer. And what they do is they look at the same problem, business problem, from various angles and finding a solution. And go back to what I said in the beginning, that to appreciate the insolvency laws, you need to look at the problem from the economic side, from the social side, from the financial side, the business side, the operation side. And this is what it offers you. So, uh, you know, and IRCA, I must tell you that it's one of the best institutes. And why? Because we work under the ministry. Profit is not our motive. What we're trying to do, we have access to best of the faculties being in Delhi NCR. So I'm going to pause here and just talk a little about research, because I see some questions have come from um, what are the career options in academics and research. Okay, let me also tell you that uh, it's very very heartening to see that young people are asking for career options in academic. Students, let me share something with you about my personal journey. I passed from Indraprastha University. We were the second batch, and a total self-made batch because we had no alumni support, and being a government, we had limited resources, not as entrepreneurial as existing law schools. And uh, but I remember that uh, till I mean for my batch, we won many awards, moot awards, defeating the top law schools in India. That kind of confidence we came up with. But what I'm trying to tell you that I was not from a top law school, tier one law school, and that also because I was never prepared for law. It was a chance that I got into law. But never have this feeling that you're not from a top law school, because you know I remember my dad always said that the top 1% of any institute in the country will make a good if he's really focused. So first thing I would like to tell you, be very confident about who you are and where you come from. And trust me, the only leveler, if I can say, in your career would be is your own education. That's it. Now, I just want to tell you a little about my career growth, tell you how I landed up in academic. And today I see a lot of my students from NLUs joining academic, and what what is in insolvency that you could do and how you could probably make a career in academia in general and insolvency in particular. So after passing my 5 years integrated law program, I went to train with Clifford Chance in London, which was a tier one firm, and I was just sort of lucky to get the job. um, I was very sure that I wanted to do my master's, but I wanted to have a 1 year of what to almost approximately 1.5 to 2 years I worked with the firm, and I worked in the area of asset finance, securitization. So I did get into practice first before appreciating what the law was about, but that sort of gave me a good idea about what was the law in working. And then I went to do my master's at UCL, University College London. And, the kind of great professors I had there encouraged me to take up a career in law. When I had a practitioner, Professor Penn, who's Sidley Austin's global professor. When we had professor like Professor D.D. Prentice, who's an Alan Overy professor at Oxford University, come and teach me. Professor Arid Dreisberg, who's now a dean at Brunel, Lucas Mistelis. I mean, you name, and these guys were so inspirational that I thought it would be great to sort of, build a career in that. I did a short law teachers course there at UCL, and I came back to India. And surprise, surprise, I come back to India where the academia is not very respected, right? So, um, well, I hunted for jobs. My negotiations failed because I wanted to get paid as good as I was before my LLM. I think most of us do that, right? And then I did not get, because it was a recession time, 2008, 2009, and I did not get a job that I wanted. And then I'm from Bihar, so I go back to Patna and ask my mother that what do I do? And she said that, Neeti, God, just do something. You're just sitting idle. But I just started writing. I mean, I just started picked up writing, whatever I had learned. I started publishing. And then there was a Chanakya National Law University. I just went to the vice chancellor and asked that, can I get engaged? I just want engagement. I just want to keep myself busy here. And he gave me chance to become a research associate and teach there. I hardly spent 4 to 5 months in Chanakya before I got a job in Singapore. So uh, I'm just trying to tell you a few things that, sometimes when you're choosing your career, guys, you become very, very myopic. You choose your career because you see, oh, salary is not good. But I have no shame to say that I landed from a very, very good job to a to a job where my mother was forced to ask me that, why are you working as a research associate? I would offer you my driver's job, and since you speak good English, I can probably give you a little extra. So imagine the kind of money that research offered, and that was a UGC scale. So Chanakya could not help me, and God was kind, and I was lucky. I got a job in Singapore and sort of made my way through. What I'm trying to tell you here, that when you make a career choices, you know you have to see where you want to be 10 years down the line and then work work backwards. And there's a great book that I read, which I also referred Urvashi to read. How you measure life. I'm forgetting the author's name, of Harvard professor, and he said, salary, all these are hygiene issues. You don't choose a job because of the hygiene issues, but what is your calling? And trust me, if you have the inner calling, inner passion, you will make big sooner or later. And this is something I've truly believed in. Now, coming back to a career in academia, you know I'm so glad to share with you all that I taught at NLU Jodhpur for a few years, and I'm so happy to share that one of my students went to Oxford University, and now she's teaching at Jindal. My first batch, Chanakya National Law University, is a star teacher of corporate laws in Nalsar. There's another student of mine. She went to Cambridge University, and she's doing PhD in law and policy, from fully sponsored PhD in New Zealand. My students from IMT Ghaziabad, who is working as a hardcore financial consultant, doing very well, is now doing a PhD from Texas University. I somehow see that many of my students are now taking career in academia. Now, when you do a PhD, when you do research, guys, a lot of people think that you're only sort of limited to teaching in a classroom, which is not true. I think one profession that allows you to do diverse things at the same time is teaching. For example, if you see, today I'm on a board of a very upcoming good policy school called ISPP, and here I'm talking to some great economists of the country, trying to learn from them, and try to take it back to my classroom. Urush and I did a couple of research together in insolvency, and it's challenging, but it's very, very gratifying because you're constantly upgrading your skill and learning a skill. So in case you want to research in insolvency, I'm happy to take separate workshop on research. But what are the few skills that you need? You need to have uh, you know a questioning mind, and you need to be a good researcher. If you are a good researcher, when you prepare a problem statement, you know problem statement in finance may differ from that of law in terms of the content, but the style is almost same, because you look at the narrow question. You try to have what kind of problem that question poses, and trying to find the solution to. And in the end, I will invite Urvashi to speak of the two researchers that we did. So, research and academia is a great, great profession, guys. It's a total recession proof profession. And I am telling you that the way the education phase in India is changing, I think the current government has done multiple good things in terms of bringing new laws. At least two things I think about is the kind of the IBC that is brought in, and the second great law that it is, I would say it's still in policy phase, which is going to come in future, is your NEP, the National Education Policy, and the kind of labor reform. So the way the labor reforms is happening is very market driven. Uh, the agricultural reforms, people may criticize it, may have some loopholes, but if you look at the content, if MSP had to work, Indian farmers would not have been poor for 60 years. I mean, just to stop the buck there. And a lot of people say small farmers don't have bargaining power, and I tell them it's not right. Guys, do me an experiment. Go back to your street where the vegetable vendors are selling vegetables, and if one of the vegetable vendor decides कि none of them have to sell below 20 rupees, मंडी में जो भी प्राइस है, मंडी में 10 रुपए है, पर अगर आपके घर के सामने 5 वेजिटेबल वेंडर्स डिसाइड कर ले कि 15 से नीचे नहीं बेचेंगे, they have already fixed up the MSPs. So I mean, this is whole economics of market forces. So maybe in the end, I'll share some books that you should read about how things sort of really pan in working. But what I'm trying to tell you here is that with the new phase of education, which will drive the career of future of India, is not someone who is special, who is specialist, but somebody who's a generalist specialist. And what I mean by that is, you may be very good in your civil laws, but you need to have other dimensions of your understanding so that you could be a generalist, and you could also, because maybe that is the reason why the government has now really truly pushing for multi, I would say multi-dimension, or I mean, I would say multidisciplinary research and multidisciplinary education. When I was in Clifford Chance, my boss was a political scientist who did law for 2 years, and he was working in one of the most sophisticated, asset financing and securitization. And he had clients to name the top guys who went bust in 2008. And he was a political scientist. You know, if you go to countries outside, you could be you could study liberal arts, and you could do another course which is in science. That is something that the education allows you. And when you have these multi skills, the career option for you also sorts of expands. And trust me, I'm seeing this happening today. What was it that IRC tells me he wants a lawyer? What is it that Edelweiss says he wants somebody, who knows law, and they are hardcore finance guys? you know um, when we were starting a very interesting public policy school, which is in my mind one of the best schools of public policy in the country, I went to interview a lot of guys who are working in public policy domain. And it's very interesting for you guys because one of the career options that you'll have is in public policy. Like most of these law firms have a public policy department now. Most of these consulting firms have a government affairs and public policy. What is happening to Twitter today? I mean, I think they did not have a very strong public policy expert to sort of guide them, let alone what the law is and how it's happening. That's a different story. But from a business perspective, you have to really ensure that your shareholders' interests are protected. And I'm not sure if they're doing that right now by losing business in India. So I'm not saying bend down, but how to reconcile this market, conflicts. That is something which, imagine a lawyer who has those business skills. I think they would be the best guys to do it. So when I went to interview, and I still remember I spoke to Mr. Ashutosh Chadda ji, and I'm not sure, I think he was Mastercard that time. I think he was with Mastercard that time. And now, oh, no, he was with some other firm, but now he's joined Mastercard. Anyway, so Mr. Chadda told me that, most of the guys working in public policy space in his department are the guys who are in sales for a long time, MBA from business schools in sales, and now they're trying to understand the regulation. And 80% times they're dependent on a lawyer to feed them because they don't understand the law. And what they were good at is communication, negotiation, and they always carried a lawyer. Things are changing now. Now a company would say, can I have Pratish Ji, who's here? I see your wonderful face here on the screen, who can also do negotiation for me, understands business? Or can I have Isha? I mean, things have changed. A lot of guys, I mean, there's not a very interesting career path. One of my students, Akash, took. Akash Lakra was my student in NLU Jodhpur. And he was very good at graphics designing and stuff like that. And he said, ma'am, I don't like law. My father forced me into it. I said, don't worry. After law, can you think about something else? And then he did an MBA, and now he's with Mercer at a very, very good position in HR. And his background of law really helped him. I have another very interesting student who's an IPS officer, and I taught him at IM Rohtak. So why is it that people are changing their, career path after such a long and specialist career options? Because somewhere an inquisitive mind is not satisfied. Somewhere as a human beings, we want diverse things. आप एक दाल चावल खा के बोर हो जाएंगे. We want to do multi, and some people that I would say the quotient is higher. Maybe Isha has a higher quotient of reinventing herself. Maybe Yash has lesser quotient of that. So now we have to step back and see that how education sort of provides that. So if you are choosing a career in academic, trust me, it is the calling for the future. It's a great career option. You have great private universities ready to pay you. Those were the days when teachers did not get paid well. You could do research. We have Brookings have. I mean, they don't have an office in India now, as I guess, but you have Carnegie in India. A lot of people say that data is in India. India is a very curious case for all the companies, all the universities outside India. So if you choose a career in academic, uh, for research, I think India is the best place. My suggestion would be that upskill yourself. Either you choose, I mean, look at the multidiscipline area where you could hone your expertise. For instance, you could be insolvency and finance, uh, policy. I mean, that's another great place to work in. Um, Health and law. So you could probably, as a researcher, see that if Manrega as a good policy has translated well at the ground. So for to really check that, you need to have collect evidences from the ground. To collect evidence, you need to understand, how the data is collected, how to do sampling, what kind of tools to use, so on and so forth. So I'm going to stop here because I think I have done a long monologue. And I told you, I gave you a caveat in the beginning that I'm a teacher. And if you don't stop me, I'm going to bore you with my monologue. So I'm going to stop here and tell all of you that, insolvency is a great career options, multifaceted, multi-skills needed, and very exciting because you can keep reinventing yourself, you know, at every over every, I would say, fraction of time, every pan of time. Like after 5 years, you could reinvent and look at something else in the wider space. And research and academic, I'm gonna ask Urvashi to come. There are some questions. Let me just take those questions in the end. Or Urvashi, how do you? I mean, you're the moderator. You
Yeah, yeah,
decide.
yeah. I'll ask you the questions, and audience can post the questions in the chat box, and then I'll take up the questions from the audience. And it was a very informative session, Dr. Neeti. But before taking questions from the audience, I like to ask one question myself that often we see, and I've researched with you, so we have experienced also that research, and especially legal research, is tagged as to be too theoretical and very away from practical realities. So how do we reconcile that? And we have done it in our research, but then I want you to answer it for general audience, that how to reconcile that gap, that it's not tagged as very theoretical in nature. So what to do about?
So is this question for me?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
yes for you.
yeah. So I mean, as I understand, your question is that legal research is very theoretical, very doctrinal. So how you make it more practical, relevant for the industry, as I see.
Right.
Is that, so, see, a couple of things I'd like to say here. Firstly, I would not say that legal research is, I mean, it's is not that relevant because it's theoretical. Theories are extremely important. Having said that, I think in India, the legal research has still not come to a standard where it should have been. So, and therefore, probably legal research is so looked down upon in India. Now, briefly answering your question on how do you make your legal research industry relevant. Now, there are two ways you could do it. One way, if you sort of remember Urvashi and I worked on two projects primarily. One was, insolvency framework for financial institutions. And both of us agree in toto that as much as we say that IBC is a sector agnostic law, it really does not pan that out. And in other research, we found that uh, there's some there's some industry sectors like service industry takes a lot of time to get resolved, and probably one of the reasons was the challenge with evaluation. So maybe sale as a going concern is a better sort of approach for service industry. So I'll not deep dive into it, but that kind of things we saw that some industries are easier to handle under IBC, some are not. We firmly believe that financial institutions are certainly not the kind of industries that you'd like to bring under IBC because it has something called moratorium. And if you put moratorium on financial institution, then guys, good luck with your money in the banks. And that is something which even the regulators understood. So the question is what kind of law should be there which benefits the banking industry and which also benefits the regulator. So sort of creating the ideal framework for financial institutions. So we did a research and we found, so we tried to investigate as to within the whole realm of financial institutions, is stressed different in different sectors? For instance, if somebody has, so we started first studying their, the financial constitution, so to say, like उसके nut and bolts हम पढ़ने लगे, इसकी skeleton कैसे है. So what kind of financial ratios we see varying different, where the leverage is high. So of course the study is still not in public domain, I'll not comment much on it, but we found that not all categories of FSPs have same sort of constitution. And here by constitution I mean the way the, the design, the financial design is, is there, and where the leverage is taken, or where the debt to equity ratio is disbursed, and where the stress is felt, which means you cannot have one size fit all solution for FSPs too, right, within the whole realm of FSPs. And then we started looking at, India had introduced FRDI bill, which has been called off. So we started studying as to, you know, what was the problem with FRDI, which, the problem that, see, let me just pause there and take you to make another statement that, in India, policy making is just not about rationality, it's all about politics. So something, I mean, there's a whole subject you could actually study, politics of policy making. It's a lot about politics. Farm laws, not a bad law at all. I mean, economists are not stupid to be praising farm laws, but the politics of policy making, right? Likewise, the FRDI bill. And we found that certain clauses that was introduced was not a bad at all, because we tried to map it. There's a whole way, we adopted a method of mapping with various countries, and we found that it's not a bad law. In fact, there were gaps. So we identified the gaps through a very scientific mapping approach, and we found as to, where the gaps are and how it should be. Now, if you see, our research is very relevant for the industry, the government, because the kind of detailed research we have done, it really shows a government that when they're drafting the new bill, new FSP bill or new FSP laws, where the attention has to be given. Likewise, the research that we did for IBBI, which is in public domain, if Urvashi, if you remember, there's a section 19.2 which allows RP to seek help of the commercial courts to, in case corporate debtors not cooperating. But our research found that hardly 3% of them went to seek benefits of that law. Now, does it mean that law is not good? Now, then we had sort of ran a survey to understand why are they not going under this section. So in law, you can make your research industry relevant if you can sort of look deep dive into certain legal questions and back it by the evidence. And let me tell you, it'll not come in isolation sitting in a law school. Totally not. It'll come if you start interacting and making your friends from a different discipline, talk to them and see how they think. I I have a lot of economist friends. My early training was done at a great place where I asked Urvashi to do a policy certificate course, because I said a lawyer need to understand how policy is designed and what it takes to make it. You need to know all these facets. Urvashi and I started getting from one of the researchers that we had. We asked her to tutor us on how to read, financial data. So we can, I mean, yeah, if you push us hard, we can run those tools, but it's not about that. It's just about appreciating how you clean the data, what are the tools like Python you use it, how do you depict a trend. Now that's is something which we did not know. I had little idea through my students studying in B school, but I never tried my hands on that. But we learned these skills. So that is one way. And Urvashi, allow me some 5 extra minutes, and I want to make a very, very strong statement here. Many people feel that, law, which is very theoretical research, is not the right research. A lot of people think like that. And I totally disagree, because when I was young and I interned with a great lawyer of the country, he was happened to be, the Chief Justice of Andhra Pradesh High Court at that time, one of the founding members of NALSAR, your alma mater. He told me that, Neeti, there's something called legal fiction. So and a teacher should really be able to push a students with legal fiction. For instance, the problem may not exist today, but what if the problem comes tomorrow, and how do you handle it? Now, if you see that in working, all the opinions that lawyers are drafting today, there's a heading called assumptions. What are assumptions? That is also legal fiction. That assuming these laws are as today, it's fine, But there's a case which has gone this. Now, it's very important for a theoretical research that could really spot certain areas in fiction. For example, um, I give you example of enforcement of penalty clauses. Now, the premise of contract law was when the courts, when English courts said that penalty clause cannot be enforced, was that parties with a different bargaining power and they come and sign up a contract, it is not right, it's not equitable to enforce penalty clauses because, you know, a contract which is worth, a consideration is 500 rupees and you're asking someone to pay 5 lakhs, it's just like a threat. It's not right. It's not equitable. But today, the jurisprudence has shifted, and today when the parties of equal bargaining powers, you can enforce that. The point I'm trying to drive here, like look at Mathura case. Through the courts, you had a different judgment which said, okay, fine. The general principle is, the burden of proof in rape cases on the accused, on the on the sufferer. But in the case of custody, it has to shift because there's a presumption. The presumption shifted, right? So even theoretical research that sorts of pushes or explores legal challenges which may not exist today but could pose tomorrow, that could be another very interesting way. I would not say which can handle business, but which can really help taking the objective of law forward. And see, any conflict of business, in the end, it might land up in the courts of law. So only a lawyer would be able to do justice to understanding those nuances of business. But that lawyer, as I told you, has to be multifaceted. Yeah. Sorry for that longish answer for your short question.
No, no, very beautiful point on legal fiction and the relevance of theoretical research, and I think that was something which should have been clarified for benefit of large audience. So I'll quickly take questions from the audience.
Yes.
Snehal here wants to ask that if there is a fresh graduate who wants to make career in insolvency and he or she does not have any prior experience in insolvency regime, think then how to land up with a job in insolvency ecosystem?
I would say join GIP. Snehal, I think that's the quickest answer that I have for you. Because in GIP, what we do is all the skills I talked about, we train you on that. And then, but the design, 1 year you do get experience working with the industry. Like I told you about Sashwat from MNLU. He's gone to work with Deloitte and he's a young guy. So but the design, 70% of the course is taught by the professionals. You know, you have great case study based approach for the problems that you do. And I see a lot of freshers have not only landed up in job, I'm amazed by the confidence of some of my fresher students who have refused jobs in tier one consulting firms and said, ma'am, I want to start my own practice. I'm amazed. Honestly, as the mother in me gets a little scared, but I'm amazed and I know these guys will do well in life. And that is what GIP has sort of given to them, right? So I'm not selling my courses, guys, because, and let me tell you that I know a lot of institutes might be doing GIP in future. I know another law schools doing it. Totally up your call. All I would say is that, the way we have curated at ISCA is way different than any B school, and I can say with a lot of conviction because I have my own association with a lot of B schools in the country, right? I've been their teachers. I'm on the board of some top, private B school, but the way ISCA is curated is beautiful. It's beautiful.
Thank you so much. Mahima here wants to ask that what are career prospects in IBBI for a person who has experience in litigation and restructuring in insolvency? What career options can he look into IBBI?
Great question, Mahima. So the two things that comes from top of my head is, one is they hire research associates and they keep advertising the vacancies. You could keep looking there. And there is also, I think, assistant general manager positions advertised on and off. These are all government jobs. It has its own process of hiring. You'll have to take some examination, maybe an interviews, etc. But I think these are the definitely two career options I can see. If you want to think about getting into the a higher level, probably you'll have to take up a UPSC examination because, like, Dr. Sahu himself, he's from IES of IS cadre. He's in economic services. He's from the economic services. Dr. Anuradha Guru, and great people. So that's another way I see. So either you go through the government route, the traditional route, take up UPSC examination, take up any department, and you can then request them to either depute you to that department in IBBI. If you want to start sooner, look at the opportunities as a research associate. They keep advertising those positions and vacancies for the assistant general manager. But let me tell you, it's a great place to work, certainly.
I hope Mahima is satisfied with the answer. Shubham here asks a very wonderful question that do we need expertise in accountancy for being successful in IBC litigation? So, is accountancy and expertise in accountancy necessary?
So I'm gonna, ask you, why don't you ask this question from Mr. Behram Vakil when he comes? I think he'll be the best person to answer because he is the leading lawyer in the country today in this space. My limited no see, I have not practiced IBC, so I'll not be the right person to give a the most accurate answer. But strongly believe that little of accountancy is important because when you go to defend your case, the legal question that you're looking at may not just be the questions of law, but also question of business. Like you want to stay over some matter because you feel that some vendor, some money is about to come in a commercial matter, not just isolated to IBC. You need to understand the commercial side of business. Uh, and that is the reason why, if you look at the NCLT, the way NCLT benches are uh, designed, or at least ought to be designed, is one technical member and one legal member. Why? Because technical member would understand the technical part of, that's a different story whether we are achieving there or not, and the capacity, that's a different story. But that's how the design of this is. In fact, one of my very young friend who's a great lawyer, you could actually write to him for internships, is Mr. Pulkit Devra. One guy I'm really, really very fond of, great knowledge in law. And Pulkit has a very interesting career path. He was a chartered accountant, worked as an insolvency professional in England, came back to India, now practicing as a lawyer. And when he talks to us, I see that kind of deep understanding of both commerce and law that he has, and that I think has makes him a very, very successful lawyer. So I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah. Another question here is that what is the process of registration for LLB students? And I think he wants to ask for GIP. Like, how do we register? Yeah.
So, see, GIP admissions are over for this year. And next year, in January, we announce and we take examination somewhere in May, usually the first Sunday, but you'll have to just keep an eye on that. And after this, there's a written examination taken by IBPS, which is the independent body. Um, if you qualify, you come and take interview and GD process. But your admission is subject to both passing individually your written and your GDPI, and also the cumulative marks. It's a total merit based sort of scheme that we have. So be on a lookout on the IICA website in the month of January for the next batch. And you can also visit iisa.in/GIP. And just, I think another way is to just subscribe to our LinkedIn page. We're very active on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Mahima has asked a follow-up question that could you provide some insights into what IBC advisory entails in law firm today?
So, Mahima, again, I'm giving the caveat that I'm not working in the advisory side, but my limited sort of interaction with a few partners and firms sort of tells me that it could entail anything. It could entail from uh, you know mm, vetting the documents like 29A due diligence. It could entail from drafting IM. It could also entail all certain like legal issues. For example, if there's an arrears on provident fund, if the arrears on salary, directors, severance package, when to pay, how to board meetings to be. I mean, it could be a hell lot of things. If a restructuring is happening, then on the how to um, draft a creditors agreement, how to draft the purchase agreement, or I mean, a lot of things. So start, if I can just bucket into various fields, then one could be the legal advisory, where the claims, the ongoing claims, you seek advices from them. The second could be on the compliance side. The third could be on the due diligence side. The fourth could be on the structuring side. The whole When the whole deal is structured, all the documentation process sort of goes to a law firm. So these are, to my understanding, and mind you, um, you know. You'll not just be limited to IBC space, but if you're working in a law firm, there are a lot of ways you could come into restructuring, be useful in restructuring space. Also, there's a practice area called banking and finance area. So, if a law firm is advising on June 9th circular, settling tomorrow, if pre-packaged insolvency comes, documentation out there. So I feel that there's a hell lot of things that a law firm may do, in IBC.
Thank you, Dr. Neeti. Dr. Neeti, while presenting, you mentioned that you'll be telling few books. So our participants are asking for the name of the books, which one should read, and especially to improve in IBC space and in books in general. I think you were talking about books in general. So if you could cover both.
So IBC space, there's a great book by Vanessa Finch, and let me tell you, most of the books I'm gonna, prescribe today are all foreign authors. Mostly so because you have a very wonderful book by Sri Suman Batra sir, but I think it's not updated. It was when the IBC came, and secondly, I think most of the Indian books, what it lacks is a jurisprudential understanding of law. So I will have to recommend you some international books. So one book I would ask you to read is Vanessa Finch. The other is Sir Roy Good. Uh, then to understand insolvency, you need to also understand, Ian Fletcher's third book is by Ian Fletcher. Just Google Ian Fletcher Insolvency to get these books. So three authors you should read. If Let me just put it this way: three authors you should read is Vanessa Finch, Roy Good, and of course the very great Ian Fletcher, who's supposedly the father of insolvency, and also my very revered teacher, from whom I learned insolvency. So these, and then in a very contemporary writers, then Bob Wessels is one person I follow in contemporary writing, and books by them is really good. If you look at few allied areas which you sort of need to read to have your grasp of IBC very well, is one is secure transaction. Um, uh, the book that I can think of is Philip Wood. Philip Wood's, I have read all the series of Philip Wood's book, and I think this is one of the best read you could get to yourself. He has one book on secure transaction, on international financing, etc. And all these books, very simply written, very lucidly written, gives you very good understanding. Then again, my teacher, Ellis Ferrin for corporate finance. Professor Ferrin is now the pro vice chancellor of Cambridge University, and she was my teacher in LM. And I followed her book for corporate finance, and again, a very, very good read for corporate finance. Um, Company law, want to have a deep career in insolvency practicing career, then you can't escape Gower Davis. There's another professor I have, who taught us was Professor Lowry from UCL. So Lowry Dignam is a compulsory text in University of London, wherever you go, whichever university you go in London. So again, Lowry Dignam is a great text to read. Contract is another you really need to read. You have to grip on contract. For contract, I would say you can read, of course, Russell's is there, but if you want to keep it simple, you just read Andrew McKnight. Andrew McKnight is a good book on contract. Um Also, I think you need to have a book on trust also. So I can't think of a book on trust in commerce, but I think there's a very, very good author on trust. Um and you must read trust. I mean, just simply put, you must read a book on trust also, because most of these books will be sort of structured through a vehicle called trust. So in commercial world, uh, penner, yes, I'm reminded now. And what I'm telling you right now is they have the student version available, so very lucid to understand. Then guys, I feel that if any law that you read, you need to understand the policy side, because for example, agar bacche ko jana uske, you need to know the mother, the child is coming from, to really understand the child well, the child psychology, etc. So you need to understand the policy side and economic side. So couple of things which I can tell you is, read something on economics and policy. I'm not reminded directly of something, but I think one book was, what was it? What is the state or something like that. Dr. Shah had recommended. I'm not able to, but I mean, just put long story short, you need to read economics and business also. So I follow few economists writing well who also work in corporate side. For example, in India, Arvind Subramaniam's writing I follow. Dr. Rajan, of course, because he writes a lot in banking and finance. Viral Acharya. Then there's another person I follow is, of course, Dr. Panagaria. I follow his work very well. Arvind Subramaniam's work you could follow. Ela Patnaik writes a lot in financial market side. I mean, these are the Indian authors I'm talking about. And I think what you should do is make a habit of reading, some great reads, some great philosophical, economic philosophy books. Of course, you can start with Milton Friedman's or Adam Smith's Invisible Hand, and then Kaushik Basu, who has written a very wonderful book, Beyond Invisible Hand. So, see, Kaushik writes about, I mean, Kaushik and Adam are complete different school of thoughts, right? They come from different school of thoughts. But as a law student, as we always tell you, that you need to understand both sides of a coin. There's a very interesting joke I'm going to tell you right now. So, there's a lawyer once, and he was arguing in a court, and very senior advocate, बाल उजले हो गए थे, काफी वृद्ध थे, and he went on arguing, and his junior would keep whispering in his ears, sir, and he would get really ticked off and say, shh, chup rahiye, let me finish my argument. And he kept on arguing. And then when he rested his argument, his junior told in his ears that, sir, we were supposed to argue from the other side, and we have argued from the wrong side. And then the lawyer said, don't worry. Then he looks at the judge and says, your lordship, these are the arguments which my opposite counsel would like to state, and let me rebut it one by one. So what I'm trying to tell you, that as a lawyer, you need to understand both sides of it. So whenever you read an economic philosophy, my suggestion would be, try to read both sides, not just get, because see, um, early 19th century India, what India embraced was a very social welfare, approach towards commercial laws, right? We had closed security market. We did not allow business. I mean, we gave license for businesses to run. If Tata wanted to come up with a Tata tea or a drink, they had to set up a new company. They couldn't do under the same company that they had, unless the object clause so on and so forth, right? With time, what we happened, we started opening up businesses. So if you look at the philosophy, the economic philosophy India had before 1991 was a very conservative philosophy. And in 1991, we sort of opened up. Now, there has been a lot of argument about capitalist, we call laissez-faire philosophy or capitalist philosophy, a lot of arguments against capitalism, right? There's an interesting book, I'm not sure which author is it, but it said, why capitalism is failing. Something like that he's written. Wonderful book. Um, People have started arguing. And if you read the new genre of economists, when I say new genre, not I'm saying the young guys, but like Amartya Sen and all, they actually started re-looking, like Mr. Abhijit Banerjee, Amartya Sen, they started re-looking into the whole theory of capitalism, and said they have sort of argued, Joseph Stiglitz, Amartya Sen, they argued that we have to marry the concepts of welfare within capitalism, right? So the harsh approach towards law, for example, if business, if COC wants to wind up, let them wind up. Let NCLT not have any say about it. Now that will be like a complete capitalist sort of approach. But a welfare approach would be, if Miss Malik is here, I'm a great admirer of her. I've not met her in person, but welcome, Miss Malik. Now, if she is to argue a case, she'd say, no, your lordship, there's a problem. I mean, I understand the commercial wisdom, I understand the market driven forces, but you have to appreciate a lot of people lose their jobs here, right? You're settling the claims, you give all to secured creditors, don't worry about the unsecured. There's a problem, right? So what I'm trying to tell you here is that the way law gets designed is pushed by certain philosophy, certain economic philosophy. And how do you get to know what is the right philosophy when you read different philosophies and try to see what is best suited for India, right? Uh, at During those yesteryear's time, it was fine to be to let promoters keep sitting on their business even if the company went insolvent, right? Under BIFR, because we have sort of trust on them. But now they say no, 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 it's creditors' money. Let them take a call on that. So anyway, so these are the few people you can follow, and in any which ways, what you can do is you can follow me on Twitter and on um, I try to share a lot of good things that I read on Twitter. uh, but in short, I will just say keep your eyes and brain open and see how, I think the way insolvency space is developing is so beautiful. We are already talking about IVC version 2.0, right? So it's very beautiful to see how law pans out in future. uh, Urishi has spoken a lot. Any more questions, or I can just sort of
I
somebody.
think we can close this.
Yeah, somebody has asked about any specific certificate course.
Yeah, that was the last question.
So IISc has a, see, I'm sure a lot of courses, guys. I'm not the right person. I can only talk about my institute because at least I know the quality of the courses. So Dr. Paila runs a very very good certificate program, and there the participants include not only young kids but very very senior seasoned government professionals also who do his courses. And he runs a course, online course on insolvency, which I guess is for 3 months, and then he has certificate program for 9 months. And I can assure you that both the certificate courses are extremely good. And he's already in his ninth batch, right? I think he offers once or twice a year, and he'd been offering since the inception of the law, and he's already in the ninth batch. So that is one course probably you could look at signing up for on IBC.
Dr. Neeti, thank you so much. That was an incredibly informative session, and we have had a wonderful audience today also, and wonderful questions, and especially for the list of books in the insolvency space. I think those were amazing, and those will help our audience a lot. So
Oh,
thank you
Urushi,
so much.
can I just
Yes.
take a minute? Guys, by the way, keep watching this space. We are also coming with our own book, and hopefully in next year, early next year, it'll be in market. So Urvashi and I are working on a book on insolvency, which is from the very, very jurisprudential standpoint. So yeah, keep watching that space for our book. Yeah. Sorry,
Yeah.
over to you,
And
Urvashi.
yeah. So again, thank you so much, and especially BR Foundation for organizing and curating such wonderful talks on contemporary insolvency issues. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you, BR Foundation, and thank you, everyone. Those of you who have not been able to ask questions and like to connect, I'm happy to get connected on LinkedIn, Twitter, whichever, wherever you feel comfortable. And I really hope that you make wise choice of joining IBC as a career option. Thank you so much. Namaskar.